So, hello, everybody. I'm Katie Karkek. I'm one of the adult services librarians at the Scarsdale Public Library. And I just would like to welcome you all on behalf of the Scarsdale and Chappaqua Public Libraries for coming to this event. Very excited to have you all here. So, Delane, Michelle would give us some housekeeping and, thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much, Katie. I am so thrilled to be here with everybody tonight, particularly Annabelle Gurwitch and Faith Salie, who are here to celebrate Annabelle Gurwitch's amazing new book. Just some quick housekeeping. Thank you. That's right. All right, Annabelle and Faith, let's all hold up the books. Win and approval junkie. Oh, I love that. We should have planned it in sync.
It takes a village to sell a book.
Oh boy. And Zoom nowadays. So quick housekeeping, please keep yourself muted so that everybody can enjoy Annabelle and Faith's conversation more clearly. After Annabelle speaks for a bit about her book and Faith opens up her conversation together, you have a chance to participate by asking questions. You can do that 3 ways. You can go down below the screen to reactions and raise your hand there, and I will scroll through and look for your raised hand. You can go to the participant section and you can highlight your name, a blue box will appear, click on more, and a funny little raised hands will come up and you can raise your hand that way. Or you can write your question into the chat feature and I will see that and I will read it to Faith and Annabelle for you, or I will let them know you have a question and you can read it. So many different ways. So please take advantage of them. Please be a part of this. There aren't 2 friendlier, more engaging, warm women, writers, performers on the planet. Take advantage of it because these women are fabulous. And I will tell you how fabulous they are right now by reading their bios. Although Faith is not going to be talking about her book tonight, that doesn't mean that your life won't be enhanced by reading it. So I'm holding it up so you can see it while I read her bio. Faith Salie is an Emmy-winning contributor to CBS News Sunday Morning and a regular on NPR's Wait, Don't Tell Me. She has hosted 5 seasons of the PBS show Science Goes to the Movies. Faith has also hosted lots of podcasts, including Wait, Naked and Ashamed, and Authorized, in which she interviewed authors about sex and love in literature. Faith is the author of Approval Junkie, My Heartfelt and Occasionally Inappropriate Quest to Please Just About Everyone, and ultimately myself, which has been called a magic mix of vulnerability and jest. Her one-woman show based on the book had its world premiere at the Alliance Theater in Atlanta in 2019 and is still planning its world premiere, I think, which was supposed to be last spring. But Faith can tell us about that. As a commentator on politics and pop culture, she has been interviewed by the likes of Oprah Winfrey, Bill O'Reilly consensually, and Anderson Cooper. As a television and public radio and podcast host, she herself has interviewed newsmakers from Ryan Gosling to Joan Rivers to Lorne Michaels, who once sent her a wedding present with the wrong date engraved on it. Faith attended Oxford University on a Rhodes Scholarship, where her fellow scholars went on to become governors and Pulitzer Prize winners, while she got beamed up on Star Trek Deep Space Nine and landed on a collectible trading card worth hundreds of cents. Faith has lots of jobs, 2 kids, and 1 husband. Annabelle.
Thank you, Delane. That was a one-woman show. Just delivering that was way too long. But thank you.
It was a fun bio to read. They aren't always that. Annabelle Gurwitch, another fun bio, is an actress, activist, and author of 5 books, including the New York Times bestseller and Thurber Prize finalist. I see you made an effort. I'm going to mute somebody quickly because I don't want anyone to miss Annabelle's wonderful bio. There we go. Okay. Back to it. She has written for The New Yorker, New York Times, Los Angeles Times, Wall Street Journal, LA Magazine, and Hadassah, amongst other publications. Annabelle was the longtime co-host of Dinner and a Movie on TBS and a regular commentator on NPR. She's performed on the Moth main stage, at Caroline's on Broadway, and at art centers around the country. Her acting credits include Seinfeld, Murphy Brown, Boston Legal, and Dexter. And once in a while, she returns to acting, like playing a rabbi on Better Things on FX, or a therapist for an FBI agent in Michael Bay's upcoming Ambulance. Annabelle has been featured in Time Magazine's annual 10 Ideas That Are Changing the World issue. Her Los Angeles Times op-ed, included in this latest collection of essays, about hosting a housing insecure couple in her home, was recognized with a 2020 Los Angeles Press Club Excellence in Journalism Award. She's been profiled everywhere from New York Times, Prevention, NPR, and appearances include Oprah, Real Time, CBS Early Morning, The Today Show, and PBS NewsHours. Annabelle thought she'd be empty nesting by now. Instead, she lives in Los Angeles with her cat and her child, a college graduate of the COVID class of 2020. She co-hosts the Tiny Victories podcast on the Maximum Fun Podcast Network, which Vulture called a bright spot of light and laughter in 2020, and boy, was that needed. She currently is adapting her latest collection of essays, this one that you need to buy, You're Leaving When, for HBO. Please help me welcome the wonderful, amazing, talented Annabelle Gurwitch.
Hello, everyone. I just want to, first of all, say how excited I am to be virtually in Scarsdale and in Chappaqua. I wish I was there. I just love that part of the country. Before we signed on officially, I was saying that my child attended Bard and graduated from Bard during COVID. But I love that area of the country. I love the Hudson Valley so much. At one point I said, oh, you just go ahead and take 6 or 8 years to get your degree because I don't want to stop coming to visit you up there. So it's really great to be here with you. And of course, I'm so happy to be with you, Faith and Delaney, very dear friends of mine for so many years.
I think I'm allowed to unmute myself. Thank you, Annabelle. I feel like I just saw you. I mean, I did just see you on Bill Maher, which was fantastic. And of course, anyone who ever reads your books feels like you're their best friend. I think it's so funny that you have recently played a rabbi and a therapist, because I feel like that's what you are to your readers. But when we saw each other, it seems like it was right before the pandemic, right?
Yes. Well, first of all, I just want to say, here we are. We're all mothers. We're writers. You and Delaney and I. We're authors. We're writers. We're mothers. But we once shared a history as actresses.
Yes.
And I just have to say, Delaney and I met playing prostitutes in Harry Shearer's movie Teddy Bear's Picnic that no one will ever see. Faith, you and I met in those acting years in Los Angeles, and I can't even remember.
I can't either.
Where, because it wasn't memorable, but you were memorable and our friendship stuck. And one of the funny things, and sort of comes out in your bio that you said, though, is that, of course, you're a Rhodes Scholar, you're an author, you're such an accomplished person, but to some people on the planet, you will always be a Klingon. And no matter what you do.
It's because I was born with this forehead. No, that's right. And for some people you're a New York Times bestseller, and for some people you're dinner in a movie, Annabelle.
And I was once on Sesame Street, and that gives you cred like nothing else. It was one of my first jobs as an actress, and of course that was really, meaningful. I was so intimidated by Snuffleupagus. I've worked with a lot of famous characters, but Snuffy was, big time. That was
yeah. Even just the hair and makeup for those eyelashes, Snuffy gets in there hours before. What did you do on Sesame Street?
I played a librarian.
Katie. This is your crowd.
I was a librarian's assistant. I was about, I think, 21 or 22 at the time. And it was, of course, just a part I had to get. It was one of my first roles that I got on television because, a librarian, where else would I be at home? So
it all comes full circle.
Does.
I have to tell you, I began this day I live in New York City. I'm not there now. But the day began in New York City, and we mask up and we get our hand sanitizer and we go down to the mail room, which we only do like a couple times a week. And we got the mail, and I saw my SAG-AFTRA envelope, and I got a residual check, and I showed it to my kids, and it was for 1 cent. It was for, they like did a double take because they were like, they don't really know decimals. They were like 0.01, mommy, is that a penny? So I feel like I'm exactly in the right place to discuss downward mobility.
Yes, and I also think that it's a great gesture as a mother. Anything you can do to talk your children out of going into acting is a good day. But then, of course, the thing is as a mom, as a parent, we all know that, you know, you say things, but when your children are headed towards one direction, and not the band One Direction, you are there to observe them, and this is, in some sense, this is that place this book is written from, of this moment where, after years of making acting look terrible, I watched my son go off into the world and major in experimental electronic music, or as I call it in the book, my migraine. What are you going to do? You love them. You have to find a way, to watch them leave you. And that's part of the theme of this book. So,
Yeah, I want to dig into that a lot later, because I mean, it sounds so hackneyed, but I never say LOL, but I lolled. I laughed out loud reading your book. So like if I had liquid, it would have been spit takes.
oh,
And
yeah, good. That's good.
I
Yeah.
was also brought to tears almost every time you talk about your child. It's both funny and I don't want to say heartbreaking, because it's not it's heart aching. Your sharing of your journey as their mother is so meaningful. So I want to dig into that a little bit later.
Well, I really appreciate that. I'll just say, just for if you haven't read the book yet, I have one child, but their pronouns are they, them, theirs. And, one of the, I of course, I love that. I love a spit take reaction, but sure, I'd like to break your heart a little bit. I'm not going to lie, because I think that that's what it is to be a parent. And I think that every generation is marked by some seminal moments and also gestures that are happening. And one of the things, that is we're watching right now is we're watching our children forge new grounds in gender identity. And, part of me, I can't even understand what the future that they imagine will look like. In my mind, I think about, is it going to be like Logan's Run, which I saw about 17 times in the 1970s, because there was one movie theater in Miami Beach and you just went to see the same movie over and over and over again. And everybody was dressed in these sort of like unitards, and there was sort of not a lot of
Well, wait, Annabelle, in the 80s, everyone wore unitards anyway, basically.
Well, you see, the unitard was the past, and it is our future, perhaps. And, like my child wears these baggy clothes that make them look more like they're fungi than a person. The gender is who knows what of all their friends, and it's all very beautiful, and I want to affirm it. And so I'm writing about the experience of being a parent of a young person of that Generation Z, and the experience of coming to accept and affirm even when you don't know everything, even when you have ambivalence personally. And that's a more nuanced space than I think people can tweet about. I mean, this is why I hope, reading survives, because there's so much happening in our culture right now that just doesn't lend itself. And I actually really grown to love Twitter. It's sort of fun, and also for comedy people, it's kind of a great way to put a joke out there. But we really need deep consideration of things that are happening, and also
And
our
conversations.
and conversation, and I in some sense, I hope this book is a conversation, and it's written deliberately in this conversational style, because I want you to feel like we're talking together. We're sitting up really late at night. Maybe we're having a glass of wine, or a few glasses of wine together, and we're looking at things, and really trying to examine them from every point of view. And one of the things I write about also is, Generation Z coming of age at a time when, look, we're in COVID, but even before then, it was a very challenging time with very little class mobility. And this is where, the downwardly mobile aspect of the book comes in. Every story does relate to some aspect of downward mobility. And the question is, with so much at stake, how do we as parents let our children go off in the world when we are so worried about the future? In some sense, I often ask myself, I should have helicoptered more. What was I thinking? Letting go. Because there's we feel we want to pave the way for them. So but that just speaks to faith. There's lots of very serious issues that I'm writing too, but I hope it's in a comedic way, because something actually Bob
I
Wright,
think
who was a mentor to me, he said to me once, says, Annabelle, whenever you're writing about economics, make sure it's funny. Former Labor Secretary Robert Reich. I take that to heart. Yeah, I didn't mean to do that for you.
you're kind of a heartbreak ninja, because and people don't realize how much of a needle one needs to thread, but you are masterful at taking any subject that may seem superficially fun and funny, and mining it for something trenchant and meaningful. And on the other side of it, you will take something that seems dark and something other people would give to which other people would give a wide berth, and you just sort of flay it for levity. And that is an unbelievable talent. I want to, while you were talking about Ezra, your child,
Yes.
So this book, my reading of this book is full of I would just earmark pages where I laughed out loud, and I was going to make a list of them, and I realized it would take the whole hour. But you write, the two of you went into Housing Works, which I know that's in New York. Is that in LA as well?
No, it's just in New York. A lot of the references are, I always spent, since I left New York, I've spent, half my time this year. Of course, COVID is different, between the two places. So for New Yorkers, half of the references to the book are Los Angeles, and the other half are New York between Canal Street and 14th Street, basically.
Well, Housing Works is a thrift shop
Yes.
all over New York City, and because it's all over, and I think it gives money specifically to people with AIDS, right?
People living with AIDS, yes.
Yeah. And because it's New York City, you can go in there and find Prada and Balenciaga. And you write, so you go shopping with your child. I believe you're sharing a dressing room, and you find something that they actually like, and they say, how did you know I'd like it? I picked out the ugliest thing I could find, I explained. Ezra grinned. I'm just another ordinary cisgender heterosexual, but I suppose it was inevitable that my offspring and I would wind up sharing a dressing room at Housing Works. It was always going to happen, Annabelle. Since I was going to sort of arc this conversation to end up in this meaningful place, but what the hell? We're starting in this meaningful place. So I do want to talk a little bit more about your what you just said about pronouns, I think is someone just compared Housing Works to like out of the closet stores in
Yes.
LA. So thank you, Bess. You must be a Angelino. But I think so in the book, when you talk about Ezra's pronouns, what you do is something I haven't seen anyone do before, which is that you don't do the easy, I'm a liberal parent and this is just a phase, and like you don't make fun of them. You not only embrace them, but it leads you to sort of an investigation of whether what you did when you were younger was a phase, right? Whether your parents would say, oh, it was just a phase. And I think, your reverence for pronouns and the language there, really, it reminded me of what I saw you talking about with Bill Maher about the housing insecure couple you welcomed into your home.
Right.
And can you talk a little bit more about first of all, I want you to share that story because it too really cracked me open. But I think I want to start with the language. You don't call these people homeless. Why?
Well, let me just first say that what I'm writing to also in this book is, awakenings and an examination. So I was someone who used the phrase, homeless. In fact, I have done the homeless count in Los Angeles for 2 years before I accidentally ended up in what's called a host home program. And what I had realized was, even though I am a liberal by every stretch of the mean, I'm far left, and I thought I was this progressive person. I didn't realize how many otherizations I had until I had this experience. So what happened was, and this is the story I write in the book, that was originally published in the LA Times, that I have a chance to really flesh out in the book, which is that I had, at this point in my life, this was starting a few years ago, after my split with my husband, my kids going off to college, all of these destabilizing things happened economically for me. I was also, deep into the freelancing economy and had lost my union sponsored health insurance. And just suddenly my monthly note was so much bigger that I decided, well, the best thing I can do to keep my low overhead in my house is to take in boarders. And, in my mind, the only reference I had, again, was this very colorful language in my head of I'm a 1950s landlady now. I'm going to have my stockings rolled down to my ankles.
Like Miss Hannigan.
Miss Hannigan, blousy house dress, cigarette in my hand. My hair's going to be in
curlers.
Curlers, and, I'm going to be breakfast is at 8. If you don't come down, I had all this thought in my mind of what this was going to be. Of course, I did not realize that I was basically just like so many other midlife women, because it turns out the majority of people renting bedrooms in their house are midlife women, post-divorce, or for some reason have their economically economic fragility.
And by the way, this sounds like the beginning of a Diane Lane movie where she ends up falling in love with the really hot boarder, but that's not where it goes.
That's not where it goes. So, there's the stories in the book about my entrance into this world and how just this cultural reference that people of a certain age will understand, that I felt like I was sending off for sea monkeys. Okay, in the back of comics, there was always this ad for the sea monkeys, and it was a family of sea monkeys, and the mom had a blonde bouffant, and the dad held a pipe, and there was a kid sea monkey with a baseball bat, and you sent away a couple dollars, and what came in the mail was a bag full of sand-ish kind of thing. You put it in water, and a couple weeks later you had brine shrimp. And it was like
Grind.
the disappointment of the expectation and then the reality, right? So I didn't know what was going to happen when I put out the word that I wanted to have tenants, and I told everyone I knew. And in the book, I write about the first tenant, who was a Frenchman, that basically taught me that ennui is just another word for I'm a bummer to be around.
I have to read. So you made a plus and minus list. His name is Jean-Luc. Do you have it handy? I have it handy because this was one of my lulls moment.
Okay.
In my book, it's on page 54. Your plus and minus list.
Yes. Okay. Okay. So when I was trying to decide whether or not I'd had enough of Jean-Luc, because there were some pluses. For instance, my cat was bringing in El Raton to, into the house, and I would yell out, Jean-Luc, living room, and he would go and take care of the mice problem.
Yeah.
And although it would, this is what I had to say about that. I'd yell and he'd race in armed with a broom and dustpan. He never failed to dispense with them, although at times his cool ease reminded me that the French had stood in the streets and welcomed Hitler when he rode into Paris. It was a little suspicious how easily he killed those rats. Okay, so I'm making a plus and minus list, and by this point, I'd really had it because my house smelled like a weed dispensary
and bacon.
And bacon 24 hours a day, and then whiskey and duck parts. It was just, I was living in a brasserie inside a dorm room. And so on the pluses and minuses, plus, not murdery. Minus, too French. Plus, rent checks clear. Minus, too American. Plus, human Xanax. Minus, too actory. Plus, rodent wrangler. Minus, dogs follow me down the street. Plus, takes the garbage out. Minus, strangers ask me directions to weed dispensaries. Plus, his binge watching inspires me to watch less TV. Minus, didn't say hi back when my kid called him dad. It was a mixture of pluses and minuses that were, but then the last straw was the bathrobe incident. He was taken to wearing a tiny terry cloth bathrobe around the house that left little to the imagination.
Well, I do need to interject. To be fair, your bathrobe was such a self-described erection killer that your sister decided to sign you up for lingerie arriving at your house every month. So, I mean, potato there, Annabelle.
It's true. My sister was worried about my being single and that she would be, I'm sure, having to come and change light bulbs for me one day and drive me to doctor's appointments. And so she signed me up for something called lingerie box, which I describe in depth in the book, but it was like Birchbox for panties and bras that were showing up on my doorstep at an alarming rate. And it was a little bit terrifying, but I'll tell you more about panties and bras in a minute. But so
back to your homeless, your home insecure people.
Yes. So housing insecure.
Thank you.
After Jean-Luc left, and just by the way, I found him another place to live with someone from Normandy. I mean, I really, I take this, my motherhood, any kind of expression of motherhood seriously. But so I had a series of other tenants, and things were going really well. My house was sort of like this artist drop-in place. And then a tenant canceled, and I heard on the radio about a program where you could take housing insecure young people in and get a stipend. I thought they meant foreign exchange students. What I didn't realize when I called and made an appointment to go to the organization and meet the young people was when they meant housing insecure, they meant people experiencing homelessness. So I show up at this like match.com for young people experiencing homelessness and potential hosts. And the first thing I realize is that I have in my mind an idea of what someone experiencing homelessness looks like. And I have an outdated view because actually, the people who are experiencing homelessness in Los Angeles and all over the United States are college students, teachers, just kids, young people who looked exactly like my own child. I was so confused. I actually asked the head of the organization, who's also a young person, if they wanted to come and live with me. I didn't know who could tell? And I mean, it's so embarrassing to admit these things. And that's part of what I want to do in writing all of these things that I would prefer people think I'm a do-gooder who signed up to unite the community in this experiment, but that wasn't it at all. And I signed up accidentally because I didn't want to keep hemorrhaging money, and I thought if I get a small stipend, it's better than nothing. So I get paired with these two young people, and we set off to combine homes together, and it was through that experience that I write about that I started to understand how much I had us and them, otherizing people who were experiencing homelessness. And I really unpack who is unhoused in America. And the reason why I use this language specifically and why I talked about it on Real Time is that our language is really powerful and it changes the way we think. And when we say homeless people versus people experiencing homelessness, it first of all, it implies something completely different than what's actually happening in America today, which is that people are slipping in and out of homelessness because because of the wage gap and housing prices, and the way that people working in the gig economy, and that's 30% of Americans, don't have a regular income. They can't establish credit. It's harder to get a place to live.
And you also point out that when we were younger and
Yes.
being actory all over LA, a lot of times our next gig was about connections. And you point out that with gig economy, this never occurred to me until I read your book, that when you're doing DoorDash just to stay alive, there's no way to engage in community building.
Right. And if you're a young person setting off in the arts, you're probably home making TikTok videos in your bathroom. You're not doing what we did because it was so inexpensive to live in places like Los Angeles and New York. I had rents that were sometimes $500, which was just unheard. And you could live on so little money. I mean, I did at one point start developing, I had rickets because I didn't need it. I just ate bagels and fried chicken for like a year because my local bodega, that's what they serve. But you could do it, and you could network and make these relationships that would later end up to be part of the network that helps you to not only remain housed but also find work. And that was totally a shock to me. And when I got to know these young people, so I started to understand the difference between experiencing homelessness and homelessness, and also how, as a label, once you affix that label to people, it seems immutable. The idea makes it sound like they have been and they will always be homeless people, as opposed to this is a transitory experience for them. And the idea behind the whole host home program that I participated in was actually to provide a safety net so young people aren't falling into chronic homelessness. But the whole experience, it not only, I mean, it not only opened my eyes to that, but to just even the larger picture of how zip code influences your future, and how I had to examine even my own privilege. I didn't realize that even though my family didn't have as much money as other families in the area I grew up in, because of the zip code I grew up in, I had a greater social network that saw me through life. I had connections to people with more money, who had connections to jobs. And that was one thing that these young people were lacking by growing up in a part of the country that's very economically challenged.
And again, I just want to interject to thank you for that, because I didn't know that till I read it in your book. And part of what you do whenever you write so marvelously is take a very personal story that couldn't happen to anyone else and you know, pump it full of your sometimes hilarious, sometimes heartbreaking details, but then you blow it up so that it resonates with everyone. So sorry, just had to, I just wanted to thank you, because I was reading that. Do you like how I'm acting it out?
Yes, I do. I do.
I was reading that chapter like you were, it was like good spiritual whiplash. Like I was like, ah, ha, ha, ha. Like, oh, look at that. They're coming over to her house and she's hiding her jewelry, but they're making salads in the kitchen and calling their mothers. And then, whoa, I learned what you just said about zip codes, and it makes me think about my own privilege. So, and I wanted to say that again. So your did you call them boarders? The people you
I call them house guests. You know,
Okay.
when you're in the program, the host home program, which by the way, I mean, the whole thing was I thought once I got signed up for it, you know, it was in its second year. It was a nascent program in Los Angeles, but I knew it had existed. It actually started in London to help LGBTQIA youth find stability. But I knew it was, you know, there was some there. This had been around for a while, but I didn't realize I was only the seventh person in Los Angeles. They never told me that. Strategically, they didn't tell me I was only the seventh person in Los Angeles to do this. But you know, I always feel like if you can tell a story about a really big issue in society in a way that is, you know, how it relates to your life. And to me, the best way of putting that was that when I was couch surfing in Los Angeles when I moved out, I never ran out of couches, but they did. And that was really a direct relationship to the weakness of their social network. And that's something young people are facing today because of the economy and also because they're so isolated. And I wrote this book before COVID, and now my heart just, you know, goes out to these young people in a way that I just, you know, I want to take them all in. And you know, it's an iteration of motherhood. I definitely wasn't their mother because of course they had their own mothers who they called when they arrived at my house, which also blew my mind. It's so embarrassing. I didn't think people experiencing homelessness had mothers. I mean, that's crazy. That's ridiculous.
As readers, we're not saying that. We're right there with you. Like it's I think I speak for most people. Like we're checking our own assumptions, and you lead us on that journey in such a non-prescriptive way. I think you know, I moved into that story from the story of your child Ezra, because in both cases you're allowing, you know, not like we're such old ladies at this point, but you're allowing the young people in your life to illuminate things for you. And my son is 8, my daughter is 6, and just this year walking him home from 3rd grade, he was telling me about they're learning about enslaved people. And I'm years behind on this, but he told me that his teachers talked to them about calling not saying slaves, right, saying enslaved people. And I mean, now that I'm learning the language you taught me, I'm wondering if it should be people experiencing slavery. But language matters so much. When he told me that, it was like a light bulb went on, and I started my whole life. I was saying slaves because no one opened my eyes to that.
Right. You know, I think it's funny, you know, we bristle when we have these certain changes in language, and yet everybody says chillax. We didn't really put up a fight for that one. That entered the Oxford English Dictionary.
Right.
And even whatevs is in the Oxford English Dictionary. Like maybe we should have thought more about
Tap
that.
the brakes on that one. Exactly.
So I think I'm a little suspicious when we say that, irregardless, someone is writing. Yeah, because, language does change. I mean, this idea of, sort of unpacking, things that we take for granted, we know. I mean, that is what I am trying to do as a writer. There's a chapter on trying to wage resistance to retail therapy, and this sort of idea of what it meant to grow up in the Calgon take me away generation, where
Which,
we were
by the way, you from reading your book, I learned that the Chicks were referencing that and Cowboy Take Me Away. I didn't realize that, but duh.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, it's this idea that's so ingrained in people in around our age. This idea that we were sold that there's something, the
Because you're worth it.
the bra, the bag, the handbag, the bathcation that's going to change your life. And so I just had a really great time doing research to try to find out, where the phrase retail therapy came from. And then, I just love admitting my own foibles. And I got seduced by a pillow in the Roche Beaubois showroom, and then I of course couldn't afford that. I'll never know how much that pillow cost. It was actually a poof, Roche Beaubois, that line. It's like,
oh yeah,
every crayon in the world has melted onto a couch that sits so low to the ground. I can only imagine it's for people who are so wealthy they've outsourced every activity except going to the bathroom. So I fall in love with this poof, and then I of course can't even imagine, affording it. So then I spent like months stalking fuzzy faux fur pillows on the internet and buying them. And right now, I'm going to have to take a picture and put it up, but my living room, it looks like a herd of alpaca are grazing on the couches. It's embarrassing. Like I tried to stem the flow. I don't buy this, but of course it doesn't work.
it was all research for the
hard
book.
to resist. Facebook, all these algorithms, they get your number. There's a pair of boots that have been following me around for like 7 years. It's like, oh, give it up, people. You're still trying to sell me these boots? Really?
Sometimes the algorithms, you broke the algorithm when your sister, who you say has inefficiency surpassed only by a robot, decided to fix your love life by sending you the lingerie unsolicited.
Yes.
And you take the survey at Lingerie Box and it asks you what your style is, and you put in spinstery and it can't come up with anything for you. Then you put in Miss Havisham and you broke the algorithm.
I did. Look, there are stories in this book that cover these very serious and intense issues. And then there are other serious and, let me say, intense issues, because I write about vaginal atrophy.
Okay, but I had to jump in with the hoarder harpist who, when asked what kind of roommate she wanted, said, I don't know. And Annabelle's like, they give you like 10 more chances to revise your answers. And the best she can come up with is, I don't know. I was in hysterics over that. Oh God, sorry. I had to jump in.
No, we could do this all night. We're
all
just
night, Faith. All night. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I love when people tell me what, approval junkie.
Namaste. So here's what I think is such an irony, right? So the irony is at this time when the most dramatic markers of your identity have fallen away, right? You're no longer a wife. You're no longer somebody's daughter, right? And you're bereft of the pronouns you used to use for your child, and you're bereft of the health insurance you used to have, and you're no longer a mother in the same way you were, right? So all of this stuff is gone. And you write about your experience with literal stuff. No, this is not the chapter about looking for the thing, the fill in the blank that will fulfill us.
Yes.
With skill therapy, you write about, you find yourself with more stuff than you know what to do with. And you put it so beautifully. You say, you know, our children are citizens of the cloud. So we're practically an endangered species. You could call us Generation Stuff. This becomes especially true after your parents die. And what do you think our relationship with stuff becomes as we go into middle age?
I mean, this is where I think I respect ambivalence, because I have this relationship where and I write in the book, I have stuff, therefore I am. These objects that are these totems from different parts of my life. I can't imagine parting with them. And yet, does anyone really need the Waterford crystal bowls they got for their wedding when you're divorced? I mean, it's like,
That's the thing.
and our kids don't want them. Our kids will not want them one day. And what do we do with these things? And then just the sort of when my parents died, I got all the letters back that I had written to my parents. And that was one of the most profound experiences and upsetting, because I also got the letters my sister wrote, and I kept both of them. I took, before my sister could get the pile, her letters and my letters, because I thought she's going to use these for blackmail, because they just showed what a terrible daughter I was. Her letters were just like, Mom and Dad, I actually have it here. I actually have this, oh my gosh, this coupon book that my sister made to Mom and Dad, gifts of service and thoughtfulness. My sister wrote this. This coupon is redeemable for doing the wash. This coupon is redeemable anytime for ironing. I mean, it's just, this coupon is redeemable anytime for eating. That's weird. I don't know what that means. But the postcards and things that I wrote to my parents were always like, send money for candy from camp. I mean, I was just like the worst child ever. But my older sister, of course, made this.
Yeah.
It's
Isn't she the one who runs the nonprofit now?
She's amazing. But
so are you. Whoops, I was about to hold up but this is an act of service in your own way. So,
well, it's and these things, we have this attachment to them, but this is not, something that, I mean, this is, I think, cultural, because humans did not always live this way, and humans will not always. My sister is watching this Zoom.
Your parents did great work. Your sister's amazing.
She's amazing.
Don't worry, your coupons are coming in the mail from your sister, Lisa Gurwitch.
So, but our children don't feel this attachment to things, right? So they live a different life than us. And so I, posit this idea, we're the last generation stuff. And, I know that a lot of people cleaned out their closets and did a lot of sorting and holding things close. But you first, everybody, you first. You go.
I have never.
There's some things you can't part with, and that's part of our experience.
And I'm sorry, but the things that I can't part with, they don't all spark joy. Like, I still have my first wedding dress, and it doesn't spark joy, but it also doesn't spark an exit. It's under a bed where it belongs.
I do a little pushback on Marie Kondo's, criteria. I mean, I will hold my child close, and they don't always spark joy, and I'm not getting rid of them. I mean,
that's a very good point.
I think it's a very narrow idea. Does it spark joy? I mean, maybe it sparks memories. Maybe it sparks something, but who am I to speak? My sister and I still have my parents' ashes, and they're in my sister's hall closet because we can't bear to let them go yet. Now we sound like Grey Gardens. I always feel like, you get to a certain age and there's always this sort of like, from zero to Grey Gardens. You have to always try to be managing that middle space between there.
I love the idea that you're trying to manage that space, and you write about this in the book while you are holding Zoom meetings for writers to write alone. You invite people to come on Zoom, not talk to each other, and you notice when you look up in your own Zoom that there are 3 Post-it notes behind you, and in all caps they say divorce, dry vagina, and cats. So
Yes.
I think you were speeding yourself towards Grey Gardens that day.
Yes. I was doing, I'm just going to say, I've got to plug my computer in. I forgot to do that, but luckily I have a cord right here.
Wait, we're running low on time, which is
Yes.
painful. I want, if you will, please,
Mhm.
if you would talk about, I mean, you referenced the title of this book, but will you sort of, it seems like it had iterations in your life, beginning with your mom, and then what you would say to your child, and then the story of Ezra not looking back. Can you sort of illuminate the title for us?
The title, gosh, that's so funny. Titles are really important to me, and how do you, what do they refer to? I mean, sometimes a title refers to just one story. In my book, I See You Made an Effort. That was something a hairdresser said to me when I came in, to get my hair done. This is now when I was about to turn 50, and I thought I looked amazing, and he said, "Oh, I see you made an effort," and I thought, "Oh, is that the best we can hope for now? Is this it?" And so it was that stuck with me. So You're Leaving When started with my mother, who was a big needle pointer, and she would make these needle points. This was actually, I believe, belonged to my sister because it said welcome. The one she made for me was like do not disturb, but somehow I confiscated this one. It was, but she would hang a needlepoint on the bedroom door, and I would come and visit after college, and it said, "You're leaving Sunday," and I always thought that's just a terrible thing to, and then I started to understand that as my kid got ready to go to college. And, there were these moments of like, oh my God, I don't want them to leave. Oh my God, you're leaving when? When? How soon is now? And, there was that was part of the reason I was thinking about this phrase, "you're leaving when." And then, it was a reference to how our children boomerang now and come back to live with us again. Oh my God, I wrote this before the pandemic. I didn't realize they were all coming back. All young people under under 35 have come home now. And I think, "you're leaving when" is the question everybody's been asking. So there was a boomeranging thing, but then actually in the book, it was something that Ezra said to me on their 21st birthday after I went up to Tivoli. They were at Bard, and we had dinner with their friends, and I was basically realizing it was the first birthday party I was at that I hadn't planned. I had missed their other college birthdays, that I hadn't had some part in planning. I was just
You were
showing
Lil
up.
Chicken.
Yes, somehow I got the nickname Little Chicken. We were bowling, and everybody, it's going to sound very Burning Man, but they all had names like Squirrel, Wolf. For some reason, I was Little Chicken. I'm not quite sure how that happened, but then basically I was just sort of like an observer, and I realized this is a really big moment, not only for them turning 21, but for me. I'm now, like if there was a film camera, I'm like receding in the background, just like, goodbye. And at a certain point, in dinner, Ezra just turned to me and said, "You're leaving when?" And I thought, it is complete now. The change has happened.
Mm.
Just as we have changed roles, and we are, I'm in the background, fading away, in their life, and that's how it is supposed to be.
I know. And
It's just, so there's a title, and then also I really did mean it to refer to other things as well. You're leaving when, with marriage, with
yeah.
parents. It seems like every exit is in some sense seems untimely in our lives, even when you agree that an exit is a good idea. There's an ambivalence that we experience. We don't just experience one thing. I actually I quote the author Megan Daum, who's one of my favorite authors and also a friend. When I told her that my husband and I were splitting, she said, "Condolulations." And I thought, my God, that's a great word. That's a neologism, and I just again, I love language, but it was so perfect. How could you not feel that dichotomy of both things? So condolulations was really the perfect expression of what is a good thing to say to someone going through a big transition. So really the whole book is about, and exits, entering exits, new I don't want to say, whenever someone says the word chapter to me, I want to punch them. So like, oh, I'm starting a new chapter. I must be on a journey. Like, oh, I feel like women in particular, they put us in this like resilience prison. Like, oh, you got to be resilient. You got to reinvent. You're in a new chapter. You're on
an axe.
Right. Acts. In some sense, I really want to ask the question: what if this is it? How do I make my peace with adapting to a life I'm actually living? And not that I'm not trying to, I don't have goals or an idea of, self-improvement or how the world could do better for me. But I do think there is something about, and even when I say this, I have to make fun of it, because if I say the words radical acceptance, I also have to note, like I do in the book, that in the zip code I live in Los Angeles, someone I am absolutely convinced is teaching a workshop in radical Swiffering. You just know it. And you just add the word radical to it, and then someone's doing it. So I'm very suspicious of that kind of thing. But at the same time, the book is really asking, like, can I just, live the life I'm actually leading? Do I have to reinvent again? Maybe this is the identity that I need to embrace.
And in the times we're living in, I think that your unapologetic embrace of ambivalence, which is a word we don't hear championed enough, right? Nuance and ambivalence. I think that's kind of radical and is in itself, every time you allow yourself to sit in the ambivalence, as you do throughout your stories, that's a series of tiny victories, which is now a phrase I will always associate with you. And I'm really, I'm so glad everyone should listen to Annabelle's podcast, Tiny Victories. I'm a latecomer and it's marvelous. And you know what I love about it, Annabelle? Like we all know we're supposed to be grateful, and I bet everybody here is. But gratitude is so freaking onerous sometimes, and there's something that's sort of more empowering about saying a tiny victory. It's cumulative.
Thank you. I launched this podcast during the pandemic, and it was something I was thinking about for a long time. Actually, since 2016, it was something I thought about from Michelle Obama had said, when they go low, we go high. And I thought, when the world gets overwhelming, we'll go tiny. I mean, it sounds so silly, but like it was just this idea that seemed to be even more important during COVID of cultivating an appreciation of small mercies, because so many things were, as I was saying on Bill Maher's show, stripped away from us. And so it's been a practice. I mean, it is like a meditation practice, this idea of cultivating an appreciation of these very small mercies, and at the same time having a sense of humor. And by the way, of course, if you haven't listened, it's a 15-minute long podcast. I just don't understand the idea. I can't listen for an hour podcast. I don't have the patience for it, So it was the idea. It was a tiny podcast about tiny bits of goodness.
You're a massive bit of goodness. And I have a feeling Delaney is going to tell us the answer to you're leaving when is sadly. I think we have to leave now. And
I think we do, though I am feeling guilty, not ambivalent, but guilty that Bess's question didn't get asked. And that's my fault, Bess. I'm so sorry. So Annabelle, would you mind quickly answering Bess, who has the question, how is your movie going group going? Have you transitioned it to do Zoom since the pandemic? And then we will wrap up.
I so appreciate that. One of the things I, write about in this book is finding strategies towards, adapting to new normals. So when my kid left the house and divorce, I just organized lots of different kinds of social activities. And one of those, I didn't organize this, my friend Maggie Rowe organizes. She's a great writer and terrific community builder in a very kooky way in Los Angeles. She has many years run the Sit and Spin reading writing salon. She organized a documentary group, and we just watch documentaries every week. And at one point, I wrote about this in the LA Times. We did a movie night out. This is pre-pandemic, where we dressed as our favorite characters in the 7-Up series of Michael Apted's, the strangest cosplay group on the planet. It was, but there's something for everyone. You see, if you put it out there, you will find your people. You will.
We're the niche sisters. I love that.
We've tried that online, and it's just not as fun to do the watch parties. And I think all of us are looking forward to, documentaries are the best, right? To see with a group of people, because you argue about it, and there's, there's usually some kind of facts or science, and then there's opinions. And so it's just super fun. And we're going to have to start again, but we haven't been doing it on Zoom. It wasn't the same. So. Yeah. Something to look forward to.
Well, thank you for taking the time. No more Up movies. I know, boo-hoo, Michael Apted. I know that was a heartbreaking loss, but thank God he gave us the beautiful work he did. Like Annabelle and Faith giving us their beautiful work. What a glorious hour with y'all. I know that I speak for everyone here tonight. They just loved every minute of it. And the only good thing about it ending is that you can carry these two women in your mind, in your soul, in your heart with their two books. And I know you know where to find them, the place that you get your books, get them there. I'm going to turn it back over to Katie at Scarsdale Library, who will say goodnight. And I'm so appreciative. Annabelle and Faith, please, everybody help me.
Thank you, Delaney. Annabelle, I love you. Thank you for asking me to do this.
And before we sign off, I just want to say, I caught Faith Salie's world premiere in Atlanta. I got to see her show, the one-woman adaptation of Approval Junkie. And Faith, when we're able to go in theaters again, I know you're going to do it in New York, and I hope you will tour and that everybody can go and see it. It's so funny and heartwarming and heartbreaking. It's all the feels, all the things.
Thank you, Annabelle. Look, it's supposed to be off Broadway by the end of this year, so we'll get you out. We'll get you to New York. Thank you.
I'll be there. I went to Atlanta to see you.
Thank you.
you all
So-
so much. That was wonderful.
Annabelle, Faith, thank you so much. I feel like I could sit here and talk with you guys all night.
Me too.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Delane. Thanks to everybody in the audience on behalf of Scarsdale and Chappaqua Public Libraries. So hope to see you soon. This was really great.
Thank you.
Night, night, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, Annabelle.
Big love. Good
Bye,
night,
Dawn.
Annabelle.
Bye,
Good night, Faith.
everybody.
Thank y'all.
Thank
It's a
you, Dawn.
beautiful evening. Thank you.